This is on assignment.
Hello again and welcome to On Assignment. I'm Alex Villarreal here with my co-host Imran Siddiqui.
Thank you, Alex. First up, pirates off the coast of Somalia and their surprising links to high-level officials.
In the U.S., a professional athlete makes an unexpected announcement marking a first in the sports world.
VOA's 2013 photo contest pulls in thousands of entries. We'll show you the winners.
And a farewell to one of the kings of country music. We'll hear about his impact and legacy.
So don't go away. On Assignment starts right now. In June, the United States begins a trial against 3 Somalis accused of piracy and the murder of 4 Americans at sea. But while more pirates are being convicted in courts around the world, the kingpins who profit more from piracy are continuing their crimes.
VOA reporter Mary Alice Salinas has been looking into the history and the root causes of piracy coming out of Somalia. Before we get into my interview with her, let's start with some of her report.
In the last decade, shipping off the coast of Somalia was subjected to relentless pirate attacks, the numbers peaking in 2011 with 176 reported cases. Now, though, international naval patrols and armed guards on ships are keeping the pirates at bay.
Can you describe to us how the attacks typically work?
They work off this mothership, then they release them into little skiffs, and these guys with these weapons, and they're shooting at it, and these massive ships can't move that fast. Although they've learned some techniques, zigzagging and evading to try to prevent some of this, but that's what they look for, the good and best target, and there apparently is a lot of them out there.
And then once they're on the ship, then, do they kill their hostages? Is that common?
No. Typically they release them because they're all about the ransom money. And they keep these sometimes for months at a time.
Mary Alice, this issue of piracy off the coast of Somalia, how severe is this problem for the world?
It is a huge problem, and it has been for a few years on multiple levels in governments and securities in some countries, and also what it's costing the world. The World Bank, just in April when they met, said it's costing $18 billion worldwide. So they're massive.
And that's yearly, right?
That is every year.
Yeah.
That is a lot of money. And so this has brought the international community together. It affects everyone. And what's interesting, it has brought together even non-traditional allies. You have China who's working on it. Russia's been affected all the way to the EU, European nations, to the West.
And let's talk about some of those people who are behind it, because I think the most striking thing that I noticed in your report was this assessment that there is government involvement in these attacks.
High-level officials in multiple governments, and that was according to Donna Hopkins, who is with the International Contact Group on Piracy off the Somalia coast. The U.S. currently chairs that contact group.
Now, what's the profile of a pirate?
We have to remember that the pirates are the foot soldiers for these kingpins. These are typically young men from Somalia, and we have to remember this is a country that for more than 2 decades didn't have a real government. Chaotic, violent, famine just in the last 3 years or so, with hundreds of thousands of people fleeing conflict, Al-Shabaab militants. It's a very bad scene there, and so you have these young men where these networks, these criminal enterprises are saying, here's some money.
What about ties to extremist groups? You mentioned Al-Shabaab being so active in Somalia. Are these pirates linked to extremism?
There have been reports that Al-Shabaab has used this as a way to raise some funds. What's interesting is we know that some of the money, according to the contact group, is going to other enterprises for these criminal networks. What are they? I don't know. Could they be funding armed groups? Are there other, how far does this span? Then raises the question of security, international security. But for right now, this is being treated as a criminal enterprise, not terrorism. And so they're not going to go in. It's a whole different set of rules. You got to be able to do it within the law, international laws and
maritime laws. And
maritime laws. And so it's a very complex situation. And she says we have our eyes on them. And I thought, well, is something going to happen soon to capture these? And it doesn't look like it's going to be soon. It's going to take some time still.
And there are signs that piracy off of Somalia is slowing. The International Maritime Bureau says that in the first quarter of 2013, there were only 5 reported piracy incidents off the Somali coast.
Well, we're taking a break now. First, we want to mention that you can get VOA News anytime on your mobile devices through Google Currents. To get the app, go to voanews.com/currents. You're watching On Assignment. A National Basketball Association player recently became the first active athlete in a major U.S. pro team sport to reveal he is gay. The acknowledgement by center Jason Collins of the NBA's Washington Wizards made headlines. And I'm joined now by Sunny Young from VOA's Sunny Side of Sport. How are you doing?
Very well, Imran. Thank you for having me on the program.
Well, thank you for coming. Tell me something. This guy is 34 years old, played college ball at Stanford, and now, after his career is like kind of done, he reveals this. What's going on?
Well, timing-wise, Imran, he is not in the prime of his career. There's a lot of doubts whether he'll even play in the NBA next season. He's currently a free agent. Some people I've spoken with have said he's not a marquee player by any means. Had this been a star player coming out, it might have more impact. That said, he is the first openly gay player in a major professional sports league on the male side. There have been WNBA players as well as women's soccer players who have come out and said they're lesbians.
But in terms of branding and sponsors, that wouldn't be a big deal, or would it be?
I think he'll probably get some support from American sponsors. Overseas, I don't know.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. We know what's going on in the U.S., but how's been the response in other parts of the world?
I posted this story at my Facebook page, and within a few minutes, I received several homophobic comments criticizing Jason Collins. And I think in some cultures overseas, he is not being accepted for this announcement.
And what about his teammates, other players at NBA?
They have been widely supportive. The NBA commissioner, David Stern, has applauded Jason Collins. His own brother, his twin brother, who played, I think, 10 seasons in the NBA, was very appreciative of the fact that his brother came out. And many of the players he played with in the league, I've seen very few negative comments.
Okay. And is it a big deal, by the way?
I think from the male aspect it is. As I mentioned earlier, there have been female athletes in the United States who have come out. This announcement first came out on the cover of Sports Illustrated magazines, which is one of the big weeklies here in the USA. Very wide circulation, and that sort of boosted the impact of the story.
Okay, quickly in 10 seconds, if you can, is he going to play again?
I would say no. My guess is he's a fringe player. I don't think he really has, at this stage of his career, what it takes to continue his career.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and for talking about this. We'll be keeping an eye on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Imran.
We're taking a break now. Coming up, some amazing images from our VOA photo contest. You're watching On Assignment.
Love, joy, and sorrow were all on display in this year's VOA photo contest. The competition saw more than 4,500 entries from 110 countries.
And photographers from Bangladesh made a strong showing, winning first, second, and seventh place in the recently completed competition. The winning image was submitted by someone from Dhaka who received the grand prize of my favorite, an Apple iPad.
My favorite too. And I talked with the contest coordinator, Terry Wing of VOA English, and we also got some video commentary from a few of the winners as well. So let's roll it. What was the judging process like? How did you go through? How did you go from 4,500 photos down to the final few?
We asked each of the judges to take a look at between 300 and 400 photos each, and from that group to select 20 to 30 photos that they thought were the best of the group that they received. Those photos were then put into a second round, and the judges took a look at that second round, all of them together. Some 280 photos, and we tallied up the results from what the different judges had to say, and we went with the numbers.
Now I want us to go ahead and focus first on the winning photo. We'll try to bring that winning photo up here. Yes, right here. This is from Bangladesh. Now tell us, what was it about this photo that caused it to be the winner?
This photograph was taken by a young man from Dhaka, Bangladesh, who went to a nearby town by the name of Gov't, Bangladesh. Gov't has been the scene of endless tragedies over the years, and most recently was the victim of a huge cyclone back in 2009. The community still has not recovered from it.
I wanted to portray that struggle in my photo. Struggle of Gov't people against the nature. In my photo, an elderly woman at her 90s who can barely move was sorting her rice grains and looking at 3 ducklings who were waiting for the lady to look away, and they would try to eat the grains. The 3 ducklings here symbolizes the nature, and the woman symbolizes the people of Gov't. The nature and the people coexist with each other. At the same time, they are fighting against each other in every second.
But the fact that it's black and white, I think, just gives you more contrast as to the challenges that both man and animal face in this kind of environment.
Is she going to give them some grain? Is she sharing her grain, or is she trying to protect it? So I think
that's the question that it leaves in your mind. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I think she's going to share.
I agree with you, actually. I think she's sharing as well. Let's move on to the second photo, the second place winner.
Saad Al-Faisal also lives in Dhaka, Bangladesh. First and second place in this contest came from the same city. This is of a man and his son. They're at a leather processing plant in Dhaka. You know, there's a certain pride that this young man has as he's holding his son. You don't know if he's taken his son to work because that's the only place that the son can be during the day, or what the situation is. But it does, I think it upsets us in this country to see something like this. But this is pretty much the daily life in a city like Dhaka, which has the extremes of rich and very poor.
Having all these problems and being from a very, very poor country, we are happy. Actually, our main strength is love between people.
When you look at all these photos that came from so many different areas of the world, you can identify some common themes. So I wanted to see if you could maybe address some of those themes and maybe the ones that struck you most in looking through all of these submissions.
People that are loved by the photographer, but also some pictures relating to the human condition, both in terms of daily struggles, but also in terms of victory and exaltation. There's a lot of humor in the photos that we received. There's a little bit of tragedy in the photos that we receive. I think it runs the gamut. It shows you the complete spectrum of the human condition. And I don't think we could have asked for anything more.
So some really, really incredible photos in this contest, Imran. I just can't wait to see what everyone has in store for us next year.
Absolutely. I was just amazed by looking at those photos. You know, it shows you a glimpse of what kind of lives people are living in other parts of the world.
Right, and it's a way to see their lives through their own lens.
Beautiful shots.
Absolutely.
Well, the subject of our next story appeared in lots of photos himself during his life. Country music star George Jones died on April 26th. The Country Music Hall of Famer was 81 years old and lived what some would call a hard life.
But George Jones recorded more than 150 albums and dozens of hits during his career. On Assignment's Philip Alexio discovered this and much more from VOA music blogger and radio host Catherine Cole when they talked about the life of this country music legend.
It's just a great feeling. I've lasted this long, you know. Usually when you get my age, it's you just retire and settle down and work on the farm, you know.
Catherine called George Jones an ordinary name, but no ordinary figure. What made him so unique?
Oh, so many things. I mean, his voice, for one.
I don't need your rocking chair.
This guy could sell any kind of song. There was nobody better at singing sad songs.
He can really bring the tears out when he sings, probably more than anybody else.
Oh, yeah.
He's just got so much feeling.
Oh, there were a couple. I mean, people argue about this, the saddest song in country music. My favorite is one called The Grand Tour.
Step right up, come on in. If you'd like to take the Grand Tour.
Which is this guy taking you on a tour of his house right after his wife left. And it is just the saddest song ever. I say. Some people think He Stopped Loving Her Today is the saddest. After seeing the version that Alan Jackson sang at George Jones' funeral, I think I might change my mind. And that song, He Stopped Loving Her Today, which really was George Jones' biggest hit, I guess that is the saddest song. And it tells a story of a guy that loved this woman up until the moment that they carried him out of his house in a casket. That was the only way he was ever going to stop loving her.
And his life, you know, when you take a look at it, was, I think of Johnny Cash's life kind of the way George Jones's life was.
Oh, well, yeah, George had his problems.
And he's been married a number of times. He married to Tammy Wynette, the queen of country music. He's considered the king.
Right, they were the king and queen of country music together. And actually, there's a great story about them that, you know, they had met, they liked each other, she was married to somebody else. I don't remember if he was married to somebody else at the time, but you know, the lore is, the famous story is that he went over to her house and she was fighting with her husband, and he walked in and heard this argument and said, "Come with me, get out," and he grabbed Tammy and the kids, and she just left.
But also, he was somebody who didn't always show up to his concerts.
No-show Jones,
right? I mean,
yeah. Well, he had problems, as we said before. He had drinking problems, he had drug problems.
If drinking don't kill me, her memory will. I can't hold out much longer the way that I feel.
And there was a period of time where he earned that nickname, No-Show Jones, because he didn't show up for shows.
What does country music mean to America?
It's a type of American popular music, and it really got its start from folk music, from the music that came over from England and Scotland and all the music that the immigrants brought over with them. And really what it was is kind of like folk music. It was a way to tell the stories of the day, right? You started singing about or telling the story of what was going on in your town or the people around you. The sounds were a little different. They weren't as slick as pop music, and that's kind of what people like. It's not as calculated, or it wasn't back then.
Were you always a country girl, or how did you end up?
I was never a country music fan.
You never were. And how did you end up?
I don't know. I heard a song one day. I heard a Hank Williams song, and I said, "Oh, what is that? I've got to learn more." And you know, you just start. You hear one thing, and you start researching and learning, and you realize you like this stuff, and then you got to admit it to other people.
You've got your blog. What do people said to you about George Jones?
Oh, everybody loves George Jones. I mean, everybody loves a bad boy,
Are they
don't
coming
they?
from all around the world?
We are. We're getting,
Really?
yeah. We've had posts from people in Africa who love George Jones, someone from Egypt who said to me he'd first, this one wasn't on the blog, this was an email, who said he had first heard George Jones in a taxi cab when he was in New York City, when he was visiting the United States. And before he returned home, he went and bought every single George Jones cassette he could find. And he still listens to them. So George Jones, there was something about him that just struck a nerve with any music lover. I mean, just the way he told those stories.
Who's gonna fill their shoes? Who's gonna stand that tall in you? Lord, I wonder who's gonna fill their shoes?
And Imran, it's interesting to note that George Jones was not just a king of the country music world. He was actually revered by a lot of other music legends, including Frank Sinatra, James Taylor, Elvis Costello, just to name a few.
In fact, some of the people also say that he could be considered as the Elvis of country music.
Right, exactly, the Elvis Presley of country.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Well, moving on to our next story, how do you get 1 million women from around the world into one room? It's easy. If it's a virtual event called Women Are Talking, this first ever global conversation focused on work, education, and relationships. VOA's Carolyn Pursuti has a story.
I'm going to stop talking.
One woman in one room.
Again, welcome New York, welcome Dallas.
She's addressing thousands, maybe a million other women in a virtual global conversation.
There's no way I want to be like my mom.
This is Women Are Talking, a 2-hour event on Twitter, Skype, Facebook, and video conferencing.
How are you balancing family, career, identity?
Other topics discussed: overcoming work barriers, networking, and prioritizing.
My precedent and my first role has to be to my 3 daughters.
Social media connected these women in Washington and 5 other U.S. cities to anyone who wanted to join. They came from 34 countries.
Mentorship is essentially you achieving clarity from someone else who's providing you guidance and encouragement.
Although the voices were all female, some said they value advice from men. Hazami Bamada runs the Arab Empowerment Initiative.
Unless we look at the larger web, it's going to be really hard to have conversations of women's empowerment without also bringing men into the room who can open those doors of access. As someone who hails from the Arab world, I find that having men mentors has been the most powerful thing that could ever happen to me because they ground me.
This event started small 5 years ago as a group of women meeting over a cup of tea. But it wasn't long before technology took over and the conversation went global. It's a sign of the times for Philippines-born Sonia Aranza.
My mother is 88 years old, and I don't think that beyond, say, the village or beyond her community, you could have this kind of conversation. And here we are having conversation with women simultaneously in different cities, different locations, different countries. I think it's amazing.
Bonnie McDaniel founded the event.
We're a part of the world, and we need to connect and figure out how can we make this world better as women.
McDaniel hopes to make one change. She wants to bring these women back together in a couple of months to host Women Are Talking more than just once a year. In Washington, Carolyn Pursuti, VOA News.
And thanks to Carolyn for that story, one that reminds us how much smaller our world has become now with the internet. We have come to the end of our show.
Yes, but on our next program, the slums of Mumbai, how one company is bringing tourists to the area to attract money and understanding.
We will also see how empty U.S. city spaces are being put to an unlikely use, farming.
And before we go, a reminder that you can catch On Assignment at voanews.com and on our Facebook and YouTube pages.
And you can see us with English captions straight from our scripts. Just click on CC for closed captioning in the YouTube player window.
And on behalf of everyone at On Assignment, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week.